2024 maybe didn't quite go as planned, but also that's fine. I always think ultras are like rolling dice. Sometimes you get the numbers you want and sometimes you don't. And to have had 3 cracks at this race and, you know, finished with very few problems is quite incredible, really. That's really lucky. And this year maybe it wasn't quite how I'd hoped it would go, but health is wealth, you know, these things happen, and we're still gonna try and sort of showcase why this event is so important to me and why I come back every time. And there's certain locations like Garaffe, where we are now, which is ultimately the reason why I signed up to do this race. It's the most epic landscape that's not even that far away from the UK, and it doesn't feel like somewhere in Europe, really. It feels like being in, you know, I don't know, Utah or somewhere in the deserts in America, and just this rolling ripple of terrain that goes for miles and miles. It's as savage as it is beautiful to ride through. Being as honest as I can, it's the thing that drew me to this race and this challenge, and I think it's what a lot of people who've seen a lot of the content that Badlands have put out have seen and instantly gone, wow, that's breathtaking. Take away the landscapes, the villages in the middle of the desert are some of the most welcoming and friendly places I've ever been. And you go into these small towns and villages and they really get behind the race and support the riders in much more than they need to. You go into some of the towns and there's the trackings on the TV, there's free snacks and sweets, and it's kind of a very welcome respite after some pretty savage riding. And you arrive in Gore, which is this haven after this loop, where there's a bar open for 24 hours, there's a supermarket, there's plenty of places where you can, you know, resupply before the next stretch, which is a very exposed and lonely 100 kilometers with a lot of climbing. I'm always very nervous about the next stretch, because in 2021 that was the time where I ran out of water, I ran out of food, I underestimated how hard that 100 kilometer stretch would be. And I think maybe that was apart from the heat stroke and the being sick this year, I think the experience of knowing what the next section was ultimately for me made me go, this could be dangerous if I continue, and that's not a sensible decision. Ultra cycling's changed a lot for me over the years. It's 10 years since I did my first one this year, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. That's a long time. And maybe 10 years ago I was way more race focused and about, you know, pushing myself to a limit. And as I've got older, I've maybe changed my mindset a bit about wanting to enjoy the experience and meeting people, not just riders, meeting locals and people who have lived in these areas that are quite isolated for all their lives, and sharing those moments and stories with them. Even though we don't necessarily speak the same language, you can still communicate with someone. And it's the same with other riders. Like you have these shared moments and memories which you create from people. It's kind of like, in a weird way, slightly shared suffering, and you make friends for life. And that's what ultra cycling is for me now. It's about those moments and opportunities with people which you will cherish for the rest of your lifetime, and seeing things that on a bike are way more rewarding than seeing it in any other situation. I think there's definitely different strings to a bow of an ultra cyclist and ultra cycling, and my strings to my bow have just changed as I've got older, and that's absolutely fine, and I'm more than happy with that. So at the top of Cala Alto, which is the highest point in Badlands. This is like the top of what is, I personally think, the hardest section in the route. You've got basically 100k of nothing on gravel, climbing, some pretty like spicy climbs. And then you come to this top and you've got a crazy long descent, which does get really cold, hence jackets and layering up a bit. I have good and bad memories of here. Good memories of being up here with Tom in 2022. We rode up here together and he dropped me and I felt pretty rough, to be honest, at the top. I'll always remember 2021 getting to the first little, I guess, like village bit just down there. Desperate for water. I underestimated how hard the section was going to be. I went and found a tap around the back of a building, turned it on, nothing. Sat down and had a cry. Called up my partner and was like, this is savage. I knew I wasn't feeling very well in Gore. I wasn't feeling very well in Garafe with the heat and the heat stroke and the being sick. And coming into Gore, I knew the only way I was really going to be able to do this section was if I could eat, and I was struggling to eat. Cala Alto is a pretty cool place, to be honest. It's one of the highest points in this region of Spain. It's full of giant mushrooms, which have really good lenses in them to go and look at the stars. Telescopes, that's what they're called, isn't it? Yeah, and there's what, 1, 2, 3, I think there's like 6 or something if you look further down that way. The road climb is a beautiful climb to do if you want to come to an area to do road cycling, and you've got an amazing descent as well. Just make sure you've got a jacket.
No, but it's funny because sometimes we receive a lot of riders who said, never again, I won't do this again. And I said, okay. Now after, I mean, they are fun, but that's enough, once in life. And 1 week later, it's like, when do you open the registration? Just to know, no.
So right now we're at the top of Velo Blanca, which is at the far end of the Cabo de Gata Najar National Park, which runs along the coast. In every edition I've done, you ride quite a large amount along here from quite far into the distance. And this last climb is like the last savage climb really on previous editions until you go into Almeria. You've got a really rough climb, normally in some pretty spicy temperatures. The road that comes into the base of this climb is similar kind of terrain, but kind of washboardy and quite rough, but a gradual uphill, which is also a bit where you can drive into for the national park. And then you hit the lip here, and it's the first point you properly, I mean, you see the sea here anyway, but that's for me is the point where it's like, oh, it's kind of a good relief point. But yeah, it's a tough section, this one. But when you kind of start to hit the coast, you've done a lot of pretty savage terrain inland, and at least you've got the breezes, which I think helps a bit with the temperature. Still hot, but maybe not quite as hot as it can be inland, so it does help a little bit. But this climb feels pretty savage. It's one that I think catches a lot of people off guard, because if you look at the total elevation of the route, it doesn't actually look that significant. But then when you're riding it, it definitely feels significant. You get to the top, walk through the gap, descend.
Of course, we have to put a deadline, and some generally should, because basically we have to go home, these kind of things. But that's why we say that, okay, think this not as a race or as a, I don't know, other kind of events. This is a personal journey. It's between you and this land, and try to know more about yourselves and these kind of things. I think that's the reason.
We're in the first part of Tabernas Desert. This is one of the Ramblas, the dried up riverbeds that runs through the desert area. There's loads of them. They're kind of epic, as you can see by the landscape behind. In fact, they're more than kind of epic. They're probably one of the highlights of the race. But it's one of the toughest parts in terms of the terrain and the length of it. Now, it's been different every year that I've done Badlands. I've been incredibly lucky to get to experience different parts of Tabernas. Even last year when actually the desert was taken out and we had this incredible road descent that just went on for what felt like, I don't know, 20 odd kilometers.
Come on!
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to see. They don't know what they got coming though. So I think one of the weird things about Tabernas for me is I've actually not really ridden it in the daytime. Every time I've done Badlands, I've ended up riding it at night or kind of at like very early, like dawn time, I guess. And so it's actually quite special to get to see it now with fresh eyes in the daytime and see the beauty of it. It's definitely very challenging riding it at night because you can't see anything. You don't really understand why everyone's hyping it up so much. And then, you know, right coming through it in the daytime, you actually start to appreciate that. It is one of the deserts in Spain that's been used in Hollywood films and Western films, and there's a Hollywood sign randomly in the desert, and there's a lot of old Western sets and props that you see in certain parts of it. It's a pretty special place. There's the way the wind like rushes around it, I think really adds to the atmosphere. Having done this 4 times now, it's allowed me to use those experiences to help me grow as a rider and as a person, and really kind of understand what I want to get out of bike riding. Having done it so many times, I've made friends for life from this. You get to share moments that are priceless, and that's not just with riders, that's with the organizers, and that's a real big draw for me coming back every time, is to see friends ultimately and spend time with them, and then share those memories and moments from previous years and from this year, and things that you can reflect on, and how ultimately that's helped you grow as a person, because what we should be doing every year is growing. So this year for me, Badlands was a much more of a reflection of my own experiences over the years, and it was important for me to come to the finish and be able to share those stories and reflect with other riders as they've come in and celebrate their achievements as well, because it's pretty amazing.
I was so sticky on the way up.
It's okay. It's okay. Well done, mate. Well done.
That was incredible. What an experience.
Thank you.
Simon needs to work on his map
That's
reading.
epic. So enjoyed that. Well done.
Thank you.
We have one event. We have had a lot of opportunity to organize other events, even short races. Now, you know, the community around gravel is growing up fast, and we have some opportunities, but this is not really our business today. I don't know tomorrow, you know. But for me, it would be great if we can spread the spirit of what is happening in Gore, in the village of Gore. You know, one guy sent me some photos. Do you know what happened in La Alcubilla? La Alcubilla is in the middle of the desert, like 4 houses, something like that. No bars, no anything. And I said, not really. They told me there is a family there with a table and fruit, water, and a paper. Badlanders, take whatever you want. You know, I say, no way. he showed me the photos. It's lovely, and this is happening in other places. So I could love that in 5 years, this happening everywhere when it's Badlands. You know, I'm not speaking about I don't know, having more followers or more sponsors or more riders. No, it's like they can feel this in everywhere in Badlands. You know.